He always thought of himself as a simple man. He never asked too many questions about work. If someone paid him, he delivered, that was all. Life in space was not about morals. It was about survival. Money meant food, fuel, and a warm bed, and that was all he cared about. When the job came to him, it looked ordinary. A man in a dark jacket met him in a quiet corner of the station. The man's voice was low, almost whispering. He asked him to transport a sealed container to an abandoned mining site at the edge of the sector. No questions, no inspections, just get it there. The pay was more than generous, enough to cover months of expenses. He did not care who the man was. He did not even ask his name. All he wanted was the money. The ship he flew was not fancy. It rattled in hyperspace and the engine hummed like an old beast. But it worked. And he had learned long ago not to expect comfort. The container sat in his cargo bay. Quiet, cold, locked with codes he could not break, but he did not care. Or at least, he told himself he did not care. Still, something felt wrong. He noticed it when he left the station. The air seemed heavier, the silence deeper. Even the stars outside looked pale, as if they were warning him, but he shook the feeling away. Space makes people paranoid, he reminded himself. The journey was long and lonely. He sat in the cockpit watching lights blur across the windows. He tried to relax, but every few hours he thought he heard something. Not in the cockpit, not in the engines, but deep inside the ship. A faint sound, like a low groan or a chain moving. At first he laughed at himself, told himself it was just metal expanding in cold space. But the sound came again, softer this time, closer. His hand touched the blaster at his side. He sat frozen for a long moment, then forced himself to breathe. When he finally reached the destination, his nerves were sharp. The abandoned mining site floated around a dead asteroid. Its broken towers and empty tunnels looked like the bones of a giant. Lights flickered weakly, but no human presence remained. The whole place was silent. His ship docked with a loud clang, echoing through the hollow metal station. He stepped inside, helmet lamp cutting through the dark. Dust floated like ghosts in the air. The corridors were long, twisted, covered in scratches as if something had tried to claw its way out. He frowned but said nothing. No one to hear anyway. He dragged the container through the hallway. Its metal surface cold even through his gloves. Each step echoed like thunder in the silence. He told himself again this was just another job. Finish it and leave money waiting at the end. But the shadows around him felt alive. They moved at the edge of his vision, and the air seemed too thick, like the place itself was holding its breath. At the far end of the mine, he found the chamber he was told about. A giant door sealed with heavy locks, symbols carved into the walls. Not human symbols, older stranger. His skin prickled as he read them. Though he could not understand, he felt they meant warning. He keyed in the code the employer had given. The locks clicked open one by one. The sound was sharp and heavy. Like chains breaking, the door hissed as it slid aside. Darkness spilled out, colder than space, colder than ice. For a moment he stood still. Every instinct told him to turn back, to leave the container at the door, collect his pay and never return. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. He stepped inside. The chamber was vast, carved deep into the rock. Metal supports stretched across like ribs. The air smelled of rust and something else, something alive. He lifted his lamp, and his breath caught in his throat. Something was there, hidden in the shadows, huge, motionless. A shape that seemed too large to exist in such a place. He thought it was machinery at first, some broken mining tool, but then he saw it. Pale skin almost glowing under the dust, scales shining faintly like silver, and chains, massive chains biting into the rock. Holding the shape down, he stumbled back, his lamp shaking, eyes wide. It was not cargo, it was not machinery, it was alive, he had no doubt now. The creature shifted slightly. A low groan filled the chamber. Deep and sad, his blood ran cold, and then he saw the eyes, red and glowing, not with rage but with pain. The creature was looking at him. An albino dragon, its wings folded, its body chained, its strength broken. The man's heart pounded like drums. This was no simple job. No smuggler's cargo, no hidden treasure. He realized the truth. He had been hired to deliver a prison, to guard a secret that no human was meant to see. And now he had seen it. He could walk away. He could leave the container, return to his ship, collect his credits, and never speak of it. But as the dragon's eyes burned into his, something inside him twisted. He thought he had taken just another job, but now he knew. This was something else, something bigger, something dangerous, and the choice he made next would change everything. His heart was still pounding when he stepped closer, his lamp trembling in his hand. He could not believe what he was seeing. The pale giant lying in the dark was real. It was not a trick of the shadows, not some broken machine, it was alive, and every slow breath it took shook the chamber like thunder. The albino dragon was chained to the rock with metal so thick, it looked like mountains had been melted into links. Its scales were white, almost glowing, its body scarred, lines of pain carved into its skin. It looked weak but not dead, broken but not defeated. Its wings were folded tightly, trapped by hooks and wires, and its tail dragged on the floor. Blood dried around its ankles where the chains had cut deep. He could not move, his body told him to run, but his eyes were locked on the creature. Then the dragon opened its eyes fully, two crimson orbs glowing in the shadows. The gaze cut through him like fire. It was not anger he saw, not hunger, but something deeper. A sadness so heavy it made his chest ache. The sound came again, a low groan, the same sound he had heard in his ship. Now he knew it was not the engines, not the metal. It was this. The dragon had been calling all along. The thought chilled him. How could something chained so far inside this mine reach him through steel walls and space? But the answer formed inside his mind without words. The dragon was speaking in a way beyond voice. He whispered to himself, telling himself it was madness. Maybe the air was poisoned, maybe he was dreaming. But the feeling grew stronger. It was like emotions pressed against his thoughts. Sadness, loneliness, pain, and behind it all, a small flame of hope. He stumbled closer, his boots crunching on broken stone. The dragon's head moved slowly, following him, its breath warm and heavy. Smelling of smoke and something ancient, he froze when he reached the end of the chain. The huge head lowered, and for a moment man and beast stared at each other. He wanted to speak, but his throat was dry. Finally he whispered, "What are you?" The dragon did not answer with words. Instead, a sharp wave of images flashed inside his mind. Chains breaking, skies filled with fire, hunters chasing with nets and weapons, he gasped, grabbing his head. The vision vanished as quickly as it came, leaving him dizzy. He knew then this was not just an animal. It was something intelligent, something powerful, something his employers never wanted him to understand. His job had been simple: deliver the container, lock it here and leave. But no one had told him what was inside. No one had warned him about this prisoner. The dragon shifted again. The chains rattled loudly. The sound echoed down the tunnels like screams. He stepped back in fear, his hand reaching for his blaster. But the dragon's eyes softened. Glowing faintly, almost pleading, he stopped. Hand frozen over his weapon, it was begging, not with words, but with its gaze, begging for freedom. His heart twisted. He was no hero, never had been. He only cared for survival. Yet something about the dragon's suffering cut through his shell. He remembered nights when he was alone in space, hungry, desperate, ignored by everyone. He remembered the hopeless weight of being nothing, and now he saw that same weight in the eyes of a creature far greater than him. He shook his head. This was insane. If he tried to help, the employers would kill him. Whoever had the power to chain a dragon had the power to hunt him down. But if he walked away, he would be leaving something alive to suffer, chained forever in the dark. The dragon's head lowered further, its breath washing over him like a hot wind. He felt its sadness again, but now mixed with a spark. A question, a challenge. Would he be the one to turn away, or the one to fight? He dropped his lamp slightly. Shadows moved across the dragon's body. He saw more scars, more chains. Cruel devices dug into its skin. Every mark told a story of pain. Every link of chain whispered of years lost. The sight filled him with quiet rage. He clenched his fists, breathing hard. For the first time in his life, money felt small. The credits waiting for him meant nothing compared to this. He thought of the employer's cold eyes, the way the man had avoided questions, the way the deal had been wrapped in secrecy. Of course they had known. They had counted on his greed to blind him. He cursed under his breath, stepping back, his mind racing. Should he run? Should he try? Every choice felt like a trap. Yet one thing was clear. He could not unsee what he had seen. He could not pretend the dragon was just cargo. The silence in the chamber grew heavy, the dragon's eyes never leaving his. Glowing softly like distant suns, he felt something inside him shift. A seed planted. This was not just a job anymore, not just another delivery. He was standing at the edge of something larger than himself. Larger than money, larger than fear. And the choice he made here would follow him forever. He swallowed hard, hands shaking, staring at the creature. The albino dragon chained in shadows, its sorrowful eyes burning into his. He whispered again, voice breaking, "What do you want from me?" And though no words came, He already knew the answer. He stood in the dark chamber, staring at the dragon, his mind spinning. It was like two voices inside him were fighting. One screamed at him to leave, to run back to his ship, to finish the job and never return. The other whispered that he could not leave the creature like this, not after what he had seen, not after looking into those eyes. His hands shook as he gripped the blaster at his side. It felt heavy now, not like a weapon, but like a chain of his own. He could point it at the dragon. He could pull the trigger. Maybe that was what the employers expected. Maybe they wanted him to kill it, but even the thought made his stomach turn. He stepped closer to the chained beast again, his boots echoing softly, the dragon's head tilted. Eyes glowing faintly red in the shadows, he felt its presence in his mind once more, a soft wave of emotion, sadness mixed with hope. It was almost like a whisper saying, "Please." He turned away quickly, running a hand through his hair. This was madness. He told himself he was no savior. He had never been a hero. He was just a man trying to survive in a cruel galaxy. He remembered the credits, the job, the promises of easy money. He remembered the employer's sharp look, the warning not to ask questions if they ever found out he had seen this. They would hunt him. They would burn his ship. They would erase him. The thought made his heart race. He could almost hear their voices already, demanding why he delayed, why he was silent. He tapped his wrist comm nervously. The static buzzed, then a sharp voice cut through. It was the employer, asking if the job was done. His throat went dry. He could lie. He could say yes, that he had left the container, that everything was complete. His mouth opened, but no words came. Instead, his eyes slid back to the dragon, chained, broken, waiting. He cut the comm off, breathing hard. Silence filled the chamber again. He pressed his back to the wall, sliding down, his heart beating against his ribs like a drum. The dragon shifted, chains rattling, dust falling from the ceiling. He flinched but did not run. He felt another wave of emotion pressing into his mind. Stronger this time, not just sadness, but a kind of bond, a feeling of recognition, as if the dragon knew him, as if it had been waiting for him. He wanted to shout at it, to demand answers. Why him? Why now? But all he felt was a quiet pull, an invisible hand guiding him toward choice. He stared at the chains, thick, cruel, dug deep into the creature's flesh, and he imagined what it must have felt like, year after year in silence and darkness. No sky, no freedom, only pain. The thought burned inside him. He clenched his fists until his knuckles went white. Then the other voice rose again, the voice of fear. It asked him, "What happens if you free it? What happens if it turns on you? You are small, weak, nothing. One breath from its mouth and you are ash. What if this is why they chained it? What if this creature is not innocent?" The battle inside his head was tearing him apart. Every time he looked at the dragon, he felt pulled toward mercy. Every time he thought of the employer, he felt pulled toward fear. He stood up, pacing the floor, dust swirling with each step, his breathing loud in the silence. The dragon's eyes followed him, calm, patient, waiting, as if it already knew the storm inside him. He pressed his hand to his forehead, whispering curses. He hated choices. He hated responsibility. That was why he took simple jobs. Fly there, drop this, get paid. No thinking, no morals, and now here he was, facing a choice that could kill him. He looked at the blaster again, then threw it to the ground. The sound echoed sharply. The dragon flinched at the noise but did not grow angry. Instead, its eyes glowed a little brighter. As if in thanks, he walked to the nearest chain, touched it with his glove. It was colder than ice, and thick as a man's body, impossible to break with bare hands. He cursed again, frustration rising. The dragon groaned softly. The sound shook his bones. He spun back to it, pointing a finger, his voice low and angry. "Do you understand what this means? If I try to help you, they will kill me. They will hunt me forever." The dragon did not answer, but the feeling pressed into his mind again. Not words, not promises, just one simple message. Trust. He staggered back, laughing bitterly. Trust. In this galaxy, no one trusted anyone, and yet this chained creature, ancient and broken, was asking him to risk everything. His comm beeped again, the employer's voice sharper this time, demanding a response, warning him, threatening. His chest tightened. He could hear the danger in the man's tone. He could imagine ships already moving toward him. He turned the comm off again, this time smashing it against the wall. Sparks flew. The silence after was heavy. Final, he turned slowly to the dragon, eyes burning, his choice not spoken but clear. He had stepped into the chamber as a man hired to do a job, but now he stood there as something else. And though fear still gnawed at him, though every part of him wanted to run, One thing was clear. He could not leave it like this. The dragon lowered its head once more. As if in silent agreement, the chains rattled softly, waiting for him, and deep inside he knew. This was only the beginning. His decision was made. Though fear still clung to him like ice, he knew there was no turning back now. The calm was broken. The employer would soon know, and standing before him was a chained creature that had already stolen his heart. He walked closer to the massive chains, his lamp flickering as shadows danced across the pale body of the dragon. Each link was larger than his head, forged from black metal that seemed to drink the light. He reached out and touched it. The cold burned through his glove, and he realized this was not ordinary steel. It was something older, something designed to hold monsters. The dragon shifted slightly, groaning, its crimson eyes never leaving him. The sound was low, heavy, filled with both pain and warning. He swallowed hard, whispering, "All right, let's see if we can get you out." He pulled the plasma cutter from his pack, his hands shaking. The tool sparked to life with a hiss, blue flame licking the air. He pressed it against the chain. Sparks exploded, the chamber filled with the sound of grinding metal. The smell of smoke. He gritted his teeth, forcing the cutter to bite deeper. The chain glowed red but did not break. This was harder than anything he had cut before. Sweat ran down his face, his arms trembling with the effort. Still he pushed, sparks flying like falling stars. The dragon groaned again, louder this time. The noise echoing through the tunnels, dust rained down from the ceiling. He flinched, looking around, praying no one was listening. Finally, the first link cracked, splitting with a scream of metal. The sound echoed like thunder. He stumbled back, chest heaving, staring at the broken piece of chain lying on the floor. One shackle down, but dozens more to go. The dragon's head lowered, its eyes glowing brighter. A warmth pressed into his mind. Gratitude, soft but powerful. It gave him strength. He moved to the next chain. Raising the cutter again, the work was brutal, each link a battle. His arms ached, his lungs burned, the chamber filled with smoke and sparks. Every moment he expected the sound of boots behind him. Weapons drawn, but none came. Only silence and the heavy breath of the dragon. As the second chain snapped, he almost fell, his knees weak. The dragon's wings twitched slightly, a ripple of life returning to its body. The sight gave him hope. He pushed forward. One chain after another, time became a blur. Nothing but heat, sparks, and the pounding of his heart. At one point he paused, falling to his knees, gasping. Sweat dripping into his eyes, he whispered, I can't do this." But then the dragon moved its head closer, its eye level with his, the glow softer now. Filled with something like trust, he felt the same message press into his mind again. Not with words, but with emotion. "You are not alone," he clenched his fists, teeth grinding, and rose again. The plasma cutter flaring to life, he cut and cut and cut, until finally the last chain fell with a crash that shook the chamber, the sound rolling like thunder into the tunnels beyond. The dragon lifted its head fully for the first time, stretching its wings, the pale scales glowing faintly under the light, dust swirling around its massive body. It let out a roar, deep and powerful, the walls trembling. His heart raced, fear gripping him. But then he felt it. The roar was not anger. It was freedom. He stumbled back, almost tripping over the broken chains. The dragon rose slowly, its massive form towering over him, wings unfolding like sails, eyes burning bright. For a moment he thought it might burn him alive. But instead the creature lowered its head again. Almost bowing, he felt a rush of warmth in his mind. Not just gratitude now, but something stronger. A bond, he gasped, falling to one knee, clutching his chest, his mind filled with flashes. Skies filled with stars, battles fought long ago, humans standing beside dragons, fire and light tearing through darkness. Then it faded, leaving only silence and the burning gaze of the creature before him. He whispered, voice trembling, "We're in this together now, aren't we?" The dragon's eyes glowed brighter, answering without words, but the moment of quiet did not last. Alarms suddenly blared through the tunnels, red lights flashing along the walls. The sound sharp and urgent. His stomach dropped. They knew. His employers knew. He had broken the chains. He had betrayed the job. He looked up at the dragon, fear returning. "We have to move now," he said, grabbing his pack. The dragon spread its wings, the movement shaking the chamber, dust falling like rain. The ground trembled under its weight. Together they turned toward the exit, chains scattered across the floor, alarms echoing louder, boots clanging in the distance, voices shouting. He had defied the order. He had broken the chains. There was no going back. And now the hunt had begun. The alarms screamed through the tunnels, red lights flashing against the walls like warning eyes. He ran as fast as he could, his boots hitting the ground hard, his breath sharp in his throat. Behind him the dragon moved, each step shaking the chamber, chains clattering as they fell from its body. The voices of men echoed from the far end of the corridor, armed guards rushing in. The employers had sent their hunters. Their boots thundered against metal floors. Their shouts carried anger and orders. He knew they would shoot to kill. He turned sharply into a side passage, the dragon following, its huge body barely fitting, sparks flying as wings scraped the walls. The alarms grew louder. The sound of blasters charging filled the air. Then the first shots came, bright streaks of light cutting through the dark. He ducked, heart pounding. The dragon roared, the sound so deep it shook the air. Fire burst from its mouth, white-hot and blinding. The hunters screamed as flames swallowed them. Metal twisted, walls cracked. He stared in shock. He had freed a monster of fire. Yet the dragon's eyes glanced at him and he felt no threat, only protection. The fire had aimed at the hunters, never at him. They kept moving, running through endless corridors, the station shaking from the battle. More hunters poured in, their weapons lighting up the dark. The dragon's breath answered, a storm of flame and fury. But each attack left the creature weaker, its body trembling, its wings dragging. It was still too weak from years of chains. He cursed under his breath, grabbing the dragon's side, whispering, hold on, just a little more. Though he knew it could not understand words, it seemed to feel his urgency, pressing forward. They reached a large tunnel that opened toward the docking bays, but the sound of engines already filled the air, ships warming up, hunters preparing to block their escape. He skidded to a stop, his chest heaving. They're already here, he muttered. The dragon stepped past him, its crimson eyes glowing fiercely. It let out another roar, the force rattling his bones. Then it charged forward, its wings beating, the air filled with dust and smoke. He followed, blaster drawn, firing wildly at shadows. Every shot answered by a storm of fire from the beast. Explosions rocked the walls, metal supports collapsing, alarms blaring even louder. The hunters fell back, shouting, panicked by the sheer force of the dragon. But more kept coming. Waves of them, their weapons flashing like lightning. He dived behind a broken crate, firing back, sweat stinging his eyes. The dragon fought fiercely, but each blast it took slowed it. Scorched scales, bleeding wounds. His heart twisted at the sight. This creature had only just tasted freedom, and already it was bleeding for it. He shouted over the chaos, this way! The hangar. Pointing to the side, he knew the map of the station from the docking logs. There was a maintenance path that might lead them to his ship. The dragon followed, stumbling, its massive tail smashing walls as it turned. He ran ahead, clearing the way, firing at guards, adrenaline burning through his veins. At last they reached the final gate, but it was locked. Heavy steel, lights flashing red across its surface. He slammed his hands against it, shouting in frustration. Behind him the dragon snarled, the hunters closing in fast. Then the dragon moved beside him, its chest glowing, a deep hum building inside it. He stepped back, shielding his face. The dragon unleashed a blast of pure white fire, hotter than anything he had ever seen. The gate melted like wax, steel dripping to the floor, the air scorching. He stared in awe, then pushed through the smoke. The dragon following close, they stumbled into the hangar, his ship waiting at the far side. Battered but ready, hope surged in his chest. But their path was not free. A squad of armored hunters stood between them and the ship. Heavy cannons glowing in their hands. He froze, fear striking deep. Those weapons could tear the dragon apart in seconds. The dragon's wings flared, its eyes burning, but he saw its body shaking. It was too weak for another blast. He knew it, and it knew it too. For a moment time seemed to stop. The hunters taking aim, the dragon crouching low, its gaze flicking to him. Then he acted, sprinting forward with a shout, firing his blaster wildly. Drawing the attention of the hunters, their cannons shifted toward him, bright lights flashing, heat tearing past his body. He felt one shot scorch his arm, pain screaming, but he kept running, screaming louder. The dragon roared, seizing the chance. With the last of its strength, it unleashed another storm of white fire. The hunters screamed, weapons melting in their hands. The hangar filled with blinding light. When it cleared, nothing remained but ash and twisted metal. He collapsed to his knees, gasping. Clutching his burned arm, the dragon stumbled beside him, wings dragging, its breath heavy. Yet its eyes still glowed with fierce life. They had survived for now. He pushed himself up, staggering toward his ship, shouting, come on, we're not done yet. The dragon followed, each step heavy but determined. Together they crossed the hangar floor. Alarm still screaming. The sound of more ships approaching in the distance. They reached the ship, the ramp lowering with a hiss. He climbed aboard, blood pounding in his ears. The dragon squeezed in behind, the walls groaning under its weight. He rushed to the cockpit, slamming controls. Engines roaring to life as the ship lifted, shaking violently. The hangar doors opened, hunters' ships flying in, weapons glowing. He gripped the controls tight, shouting, "Hold on!" The dragon crouched low, its eyes blazing. The ship burst forward, dodging fire, engines screaming. He could feel death chasing them. But he also felt something else, a fire burning inside him. Not fear, not greed, but purpose. They had escaped the chains, but now the real fight had begun. The ship rattled as it shot into space, alarms blaring inside the cockpit. He gripped the controls with both hands, his burned arms screaming in pain. Outside the window, streaks of light flashed as enemy ships chased them, blasters cutting across the darkness, explosions blooming behind. The dragon crouched inside the cargo bay, its massive body pressed against the walls. The ship groaned under its weight. Its white scales glowed faintly in the dim light. Its eyes fixed on the stars outside. For the first time in years, it was free from chains. Yet the wounds across its body showed how weak it still was. He pulled the ship into a sharp dive, engines screaming, enemy fire cutting close. He muttered curses through clenched teeth, sweat dripping down his face. Then he spotted a small cluster of asteroids ahead, jagged rocks spinning slowly in the dark. He pushed the ship toward them, weaving between their shadows, using them as cover. At last the scanners showed no pursuers. The enemy ships had lost them in the asteroid field. The alarms fell silent. Only the heavy hum of engines remained. He slumped in the pilot's seat, breathing hard, the taste of metal in his mouth. His whole body shaking, silence filled the ship, broken only by the dragon's slow breathing. He turned in his chair, staring back into the cargo bay. For a long time, neither of them moved. Human and dragon, two survivors bound by escape. Finally, he stood, his legs weak. He walked slowly toward the dragon. Each step heavy, he stopped just a few feet away, tilting his head back to meet its crimson eyes. "You're free now," he whispered, though his voice was rough. "But what are you really?" The dragon stared, unblinking. Then he felt it again, the wave of emotion pressing into his mind. Not words, but visions, images flashing like dreams. He saw a sky filled with pale fire, dragons flying in great numbers, their wings shining like silver under strange stars. He saw humans standing beside them, warriors carrying blades of light, fighting together against dark ships and terrible machines. Then he saw the fall. Hunters with chains and weapons, nets of fire pulling dragons down, cages filled with screams. The vision ended with darkness. A single dragon chained in stone, forgotten. He gasped, staggering back, clutching his head, the images fading but the weight of them still inside his chest. He stared at the dragon, his voice trembling. You were not just an animal. You were part of something, part of a war." The dragon blinked slowly, its eyes glowing softer now. It lowered its head slightly, almost like a nod. He sank to the floor, leaning against the wall, his mind racing. He had thought this was just a job, thought he was smuggling cargo for credits, but the truth was so much bigger. He had stepped into a story older than himself, a war between those who chained and those who resisted, and now he was part of it. The dragon's gaze stayed on him, and he felt another emotion push into his thoughts. Not sadness this time, not pain, but recognition, as if it was telling him, "You are my protector now." His chest tightened. He laughed bitterly. "Protector? I can barely protect myself." But even as he said it, something inside him shifted. He remembered the way the dragon had fought for him in the tunnels, the way it had spared him when fire could have burned him to ash. He realized it had already chosen him. He closed his eyes, resting his head against the wall, his arm throbbing with pain, exhaustion pulling at him. But the warmth in his mind would not let him sleep. It was like a silent fire, steady and strong, reminding him he was not alone. Hours passed in silence. The ship drifting through the asteroid field. At last he forced himself to stand again, moving back to the cockpit, scanning the stars. He knew it was only a matter of time before they came again. The employers would not let a dragon escape. They would send fleets. They would hunt him forever. But when he looked back at the dragon, he felt something else too, hope. The creature shifted, lifting its wings slightly, the glow of its scales filling the bay with soft light. It was still weak, but strength was returning. Piece by piece, breath by breath, he felt it like a current in the air. He placed a hand on the cold wall, speaking softly. I don't know why I'm doing this. I don't even know what happens next. But I can't turn back now. His voice was steadier than he expected. The dragon's eyes glowed brighter. Answering without sound, he turned back to the stars, a strange fire burning inside him. For years he had been nothing more than a drifter, a man with no cause, no purpose. But now he carried something greater than himself, and that weight felt heavy yet right. He thought of the employer's voice, cold and sharp, the threats that would soon come, fleets hunting him, bounties placed on his head. But he also thought of the bond he now felt, the unspoken link between him and the albino dragon. They were no longer cargo and smuggler. They were allies, partners, bound by survival and trust, and deep inside he knew this was not the end of the story. This was only the beginning of a fight that would change the galaxy. The silence of space did not last long. Soon the scanners lit up, red warnings flashing across the screen. Dozens of ships closing in fast. The employer had sent his fleet. They were not going to let the dragon go. He gripped the controls, his jaw tight, sweat on his forehead. His ship was small, weak, no match for the firepower chasing them. The engines groaned as he pushed them to their limits, the stars stretching into lines as the ship darted through the void. But the enemy ships were faster, closing like wolves. The dragon lifted its head in the cargo bay, eyes glowing crimson. Its wings stretching even in the cramped space. He felt the pressure in his mind again. Not fear, not sadness, but a question, a call, as if it was asking him if he was ready. He looked back once, meeting those burning eyes, then nodded. "We fight together," he whispered. The first wave of enemy fire struck. Shaking the ship, alarms screamed. Sparks burst from the panels. He cursed and pulled the ship into a sharp roll, weaving through the deadly lights. His hands moved fast, but his heart knew the truth. He could not outrun them all. The dragon roared. The sound shaking the ship itself, its mouth glowed. Then it released a blast of pale fire through the rear hatch. The flames poured into the darkness. Catching two enemy ships, they exploded in bursts of light. The shock waves rattled the others. Hope flared in his chest, but the price was clear. The dragon staggered, its body trembling. The years of chains had weakened it. Each blast drained more strength. He shouted over the alarms, "Hold on, just a little longer." The enemy regrouped, their formation tightening, their weapons glowing brighter. Then the largest ship appeared. A black cruiser, massive and sharp like a blade cutting through the stars, its guns glowing with deadly power. His heart sank. He knew this was no ordinary hunter. This was the employer's flagship. The man himself would be watching, ready to crush the traitor and reclaim the dragon. The cruiser's voice came through the comms. Cold and sharp, "You cannot escape, return the asset, or be destroyed." He glanced at the dragon, then spat at the controls. "Not a chance," he whispered. The guns of the cruiser fired, beams of light tearing through the void. He rolled the ship hard, alarms blaring, metal groaning. His ship shook like it would break apart. He clenched his teeth, forcing it forward. Weaving between the blasts, the dragon moved closer to the hatch, pressing against the walls, its eyes burning like suns. He felt the fire building inside it, the pressure of power ready to explode, but also the strain, the danger if it unleashed too much. It might not survive. He knew the choice now. It was his turn to decide, just like in the chamber. He could run, hide in the asteroids, maybe live another day, or he could fight, stand with the dragon, risk everything for freedom. His hand tightened on the controls, his voice low but steady. "We fight," the dragon roared, the sound bursting through the ship, filling every corner with fire and fury. It forced its head to the hatch, wings spreading as much as space allowed. Its mouth glowed brighter and brighter, until the whole bay was bathed in white light. The cruiser fired again, beams cutting toward them. But the dragon released its breath, a torrent of pale fire unlike anything before. The flames stretched across the stars, meeting the beams, devouring them. Then crashing into the cruiser itself, the black ship shook, its hull glowing red, metal breaking, explosions blooming along its sides. The roar of the dragon echoed across space. The enemy fleet broke apart, their formation shattered by fear. He pulled his ship upward, dodging debris, eyes wide in awe. The dragon's fire had cut through the flagship, something no human weapon had done before. But when the light faded, he saw the dragon collapse, its head lowering, smoke rising from its scales, its body trembling. It had given everything in that one blast. He rushed from the cockpit into the cargo bay, falling to his knees beside the massive creature. His hand pressed against its cold scales, his voice shaking. "No, don't you quit on me." "Not now," The dragon's eyes flickered open, weak but still glowing. He felt its presence in his mind, soft and fading but steady. Not goodbye, not yet, but a promise, a bond unbroken. He breathed out, relief mixing with fear. He whispered, "We made it. We really made it." Behind them, the cruiser burned, breaking apart, the rest of the fleet retreating into the dark. Afraid to face the fire again, the stars around them clear for now, he stood slowly, looking out the window at the endless sky. For the first time in his life, he felt something he had never felt before. Purpose. He turned back to the dragon, its body rising and falling with each heavy breath, its eyes watching him. No words passed between them, but they did not need words. He thought back to the beginning, when it was just a job, when all he wanted was credits, and he laughed bitterly. "What a fool I was," he said softly. "This isn't just a job, this is destiny." The dragon's eyes glowed faintly. As if agreeing, he sat down beside it, staring out at the stars, knowing the war was not over, knowing enemies would return, stronger and angrier, but also knowing he would not face them alone. Because now a man and a dragon were bound together, two lost souls who had found each other in chains, and together they would change everything.